politics has not ruined me as far as I can tell. I don't think along political lines. I still think along objective, reasonable lines, I think. But politics ruins everything. Music, art, film, science, sports, and politics, for that matter. Politics ruins politics. Listen to this, people. Listen to this.
Who needs to bring them? I just laid out for you. No, Peter, I just laid out for you how we're seeing this process and why this matters. Again, I just laid out because of the work that we have done in the economy, because of the American Rescue Plan, because
sorry, I didn't mean to do that. This is my own personal observation. When I look back at old videos of me, and when I look back at videos of people who felt uncomfortable behind the camera, what they often do, the eyes are always somewhat closed and long blinks, because people have the sort of the inner sensation that if they blink long and don't see the world doesn't see them, because they're uncomfortable. They don't feel confident behind camera. Watch Jean-Pierre's blinks. These are the blinks of insecurity. She does not believe in what she's saying, and she's being used as a pawn in this political game to get up there and spew lies.
I just laid out for you. No, Peter, I just laid out for you how we're seeing this process and why this matters. Again, I just laid out because of the work that we have done in the economy, because of the American Rescue Plan, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, and because all of this work that this president has done has brought down our deficit by $1.7 trillion, unlike what Republicans did when they added to our deficit $2 trillion and did not care at all or thought about how this was going to be paid for. They did not actually put in a process or think about how we're going to do this in a smart way. This is not how this administration is doing it. Again, we are happy to continue to have this conversation, but I'm going to move around.
I'm happy to have this conversation, but not now. And I want to highlight one point. It's preposterous. It's one incident after another where Jean-Pierre is incapable of providing an honest, direct answer. And understandably so, because there is no honest answer that is going to be a palatable answer. How are they going to pay for all of this student loan forgiveness? The Republicans they added deficit too. I'd love to know the context, by the way, because adding debt while adding income is not necessarily the end of the world. Adding debt when there's no income is a problem. She thinks a $70,000 job is worth her integrity. Is that what they get paid? You know what? Before I make my point, I want to see what the press secretary. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be more than 70,000. Press secretary. Oh no, she makes 180,000. That's still not enough. Your integrity has no price. But that's much more than 70,000. Hold on one second. Here's what here we go. Biden, and now take it for what it's worth, people. Deseret.com. Here's what Biden's White House staffers make each year. What's her name? Jean-Pierre. Current White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre makes $180,000 annual salary. On Wednesday, the Biden House revealed that the salaries of all its employees in an annual report, with salaries ranging from $0 to $100. So she's paid the max. Now there is no price for integrity. There's no price for honor. There's no price for self-respect. But $180,000 is a hefty salary, U.S. no less. It's like 200. Let's get the math here properly. It's like 25 times 8. It's going to be 16. That's like $220,000 Canadian. That's a lot of money. There is no after tax. There is no price on integrity and respect for oneself. And like I look at Brian Stelter, and the reason why I feel pity for him after everything he's been through, there's no amount of money that can really compensate for that amount of shame. There's an amount of money that can make it easier to hide from that shame or make it easier to deal with that shame. Used and abused, and all it cost him was everything. But this is my problem with Jean-Pierre. This is like, people don't really remember this. The New York Times comes out, and Jean-Pierre did it to herself as well during the first press conference, reduces an individual to a series of aspects of identity politics. Jean-Pierre came out it was one of her first press conferences, and says, I'm the first Black, openly gay press secretary, raised with immigrants, yada, yada, yada. As if it's not just that any of that is totally irrelevant for the job position. These elements of, this is where we have to draw the nuance. These elements of identity, they're relevant for discussion, for understanding a person, their perspectives on the world, for understanding who the person is. And it's great. You want to understand why someone doesn't answer the phone on Saturday. These things become relevant. You want to understand dietary habits, historical perspectives, views on the world. They're relevant to understanding an individual as an individual. They are not relevant for assessing concepts, for discussing issues as issues. As a blank, fill in the blank, does not add legitimacy or detract from one's opinion on an issue. And I'll just take mine so no one accuses me of anything. As a Jew, as a born Jew, does not make my views on the Holocaust any more legitimate than a non-Jew who has opinions on the Holocaust. It doesn't make my assessment any more valuable, and it doesn't make anyone else's assessment less valuable. As a man, doesn't make my opinion any less valuable on other issues. When it comes to, let's say, parenting, as a parent, if the issue is child rearing, it won't make my opinion any more valuable. It just might make it more empirically based in order for other people to test. Someone without kids can have a very perfectly legitimate opinion on parenting. It might be more likely than not that they might not have an accurate opinion, but it doesn't disqualify the opinion to begin with. What is the purpose of objectifying Jean-Pierre? What's the purpose of objectifying her? Reducing this complex individual human with a job to check marks of identity politics? Well, it certainly opens up the argument that any critique of her for the ideas is actually going to be based not in critique of the ideas per se, but in critique of the individual aspects of identity politics. New York Times, Karine Jean-Pierre, unlikely rise to the White House lectern. As an individual accomplishment, okay. What the reality is, in my humble view, parading out pawns, objectifying these pawns so that it becomes difficult, or at the very least, weaponizable to go after the critique of these individuals as critique not of the ideas being expressed by the individuals, but as some form of underlying critique of the individual themselves. Criticizing Hillary Clinton was misogyny, but criticizing Ben Shapiro is not anti-Semitism because, it's different. Parading out an individual to spew lies of the administration, and then in a way, arguably shielding that individual from, I don't want to say ridicule, from public scorn because of the absolute idiocy of the answers being provided. It's strategic, and it's strategically dishonest.